wanted to talk today about when we choose our partners, the things that we're looking for. And as I talk about this, I'm talking about it in various capacities, because I think automatically when we start talking about choosing partners, we think about our romantic partners, our relationships. And the fact is that there are many types of partnerships in life. You can have your life partner, and then you can have a business partner, and you have collaboration partners. And I think that, and you can have partners that are project based as well. And I think that, it's important to kind of think through when you have an affinity for someone who does, say, similar work as you, or you have an adventure, an idea for a venture together, that there are certain things to be mindful of as you're moving forward. And the reason I thought about this is because I was having a conversation with my contractor, who happens to also be a friend of mine, and who was also featured on this week's podcast. So if you haven't listened to it yet, remap your mind. If you haven't listened to it, it's posted in my timeline. Go ahead and check it out. Wes Whitsitt. And so Wes does it. And so we were having this conversation about, working with partners, working in partnership. Specifically, we were talking about it from a business standpoint, and how there are these various things to think about. Now, many of you know that some of the work that I do beyond the neuro-linguistic programming and the hypnosis training is in anti-racism. And my partner is Dr. Jill Weiner, and we met last year and had an immediate affinity toward each other. And so when we talked about, as we started to do our work together, Jill was like, okay, let's do it. Let's go full on partnership. She wanted to, let's start the LLC together. Let's just go full on. But the truth is, we had not known each other for very long. And so it's easy when you're in partnership, when you're choosing partners, when you have that, you feel that physiological attraction, whether it's attraction because of a shared idea or whether it's a romantic attraction. When you feel that physiologic feeling of excitement, that's movement toward a common goal, that you want to immediately just, let's do it. Let's jump right in. But there are reasons to be slow, to go slow, to be cautious, I would say. Not overly cautious, but to walk an intentional path. So I said to Joe, I am so excited to do this work with you. And before we get married, because anytime you enter a legal partnership in business, it is like entering a legal partnership for life. If the intention of, right? I said let's date, and we set up a particular structure in which we work together, get through our first year of trainings together, and then we revisit the idea of marriage. So we've been in the space of working together and courting, and then moving into, okay, do we form this full legal bond, right? And so as I was talking to Wes, we were revisiting some similar things, and he was sharing with me when he works with investors, because he's a contractor, he works on a lot of investment properties as well in real estate investors, that as he chooses his partners, he looks at certain things, and we began to discuss these things. And one of the things is how one deals in stressful situations, right? And it's an interesting thing, because a person, when you first meet a person, and you want to go into partnership with them, whether it's romantic partnership, business partnership, a project together, both people can be excited. Both people can even have a good work ethic. But when under duress, how do they react? How do they handle stress? Because we can all keep our put our best foot forward, or as some people say, put our representative forward. And we can all put our best foot forward when things are going well. But when shit hits the fan, when, things get really stressful, when things get really scary, how does that person react? How do they handle stress? Okay. And, there are various ways that people handle stress. Some people throw temper tantrums. Some people withdraw completely from communication. And some people can be steady in stress. So you have to, number one, know your capacity if you're going into a partnership, to handle stress and risk, right? Depending on what it is that you're partnering in. And you have to be able to see another person's response to adversity or to stress, or to things that scare them. And so it's an interesting thing because, for myself personally, I have acquired the practice of, over time, being able to speak what I'm feeling. And sometimes people, as I've shared in many videos before this, we have been conditioned to not share when we're scared or when we're having emotional reactions, because in partnerships in certain situations, it's been deemed inappropriate. But when you are partnering with someone one-on-one, when you're entering that kind of a partnership, it's important to be in communication with what's happening, what's going on, so that, number one, if there's something that needs to be worked out, it can be worked out, right? And you want to look for that in your partner as well. How do they communicate in general, of course, right? Are they a person that stays in communication about whatever's going on, so you're never left in the dark? I think that's an important thing to look at in partners, like how do they communicate? And then when things begin to get stressful, do they stay in communication, right, about what's going on? I have a friend who she was in the dating world, and she was dating this guy who he underwent an enormous amount of stress and then just disappeared, and then resurfaced months later to explain that all this stuff had happened. Well, that's all well and good, but there was no communication to say, hey, I'm going through something. I'm going to, need to, focus on myself for a while, or I'm going to need to go into the cave, or whatever the case may be, right? So how does a person communicate in general, but specifically when things start to get stressful? Does the communication lapse and go away, or does the person give you a heads up? That's important to know when entering in any partnership. And then another thing to think about is, are their words consistent with their actions, right? If you, and this is something to watch over time. And this is why I'm saying it's important sometimes even when you're excited about a relationship, any kind of relationship, to take a step back from the emotion of it, right? Now, honor the emotion, but step back from letting the emotion determine the action so much, and begin to take your time walking through being with a person, getting to know a person, watching and observing the person, watching and observing the dynamic between the two of you, right? Because that's important as well, right? So, as we're watching the person, are their words consistent with their actions? Do they act one way, in one situation, or is their personality, I should say, one way in one situation and completely different in another situation? Or do they make promises that they don't keep? Or do they, say they're going to do something, not do it, and not even acknowledge that it wasn't done? So there's a lot of parameters, there's a lot of conditions to looking at, or ways to look at the consistency of one's word and action. And I like to call that integrity. Do the insides match the outside, or does what's coming out of the mouth match the actions? And in a previous video, I think I talked about calibrating on behavior, right? When someone is sharing with you, when someone's talking to you about whatever they're talking to you about, if they're making promises, if they're saying they're going to do this or that, then calibrate on the behavior. Does the behavior match the words coming out of the mouth? So when you're looking at partnerships, and I'm talking about all partnerships at this point, romantic partnerships, business partnerships, you take the time to observe the person and look at, how they are under stress. Do their words match their actions? And then the third thing is to look at the dynamic between you two, right? Because the fact is, there could be incompatibilities. There could be differences that, in a lot of cases, being in communication can resolve a lot of differences. But when it comes to values, if values are completely misaligned, then that may be an incompatibility that just won't resolve in communication. And so when you're looking at partnerships, you want to look at what the dynamics between the two. What are the deeper values? What are the intentions? What are the goals, long-term goals? I was talking to, like I said, my friend, and he was talking about how, in partnership, he had the experience of working with people who, their primary value was money. And so they would cut, their partner off at the knees just for the dollar, as opposed to really truly being in partnership and having everyone win, right? Those are two different values, right? And so you got to look at that. You got to look at, well, what are the values? If you're in a romantic partnership and your, spiritual values are completely different, or your money values are completely different, or your family values are completely different, then that's something very, very serious to take a look at. Because again, some values, some incompatibilities are beyond communication. Communication won't fix those. And I myself never ask someone else to change their values for me, because at the end of the day, what that causes is resentment. It causes resentment when you ask someone to change for you, right? A person, if they're going to shift their values, if they're going to reassess their values and change them, should be doing it for themselves. And so those are three big things that you want to be looking at when you're looking at partnership, and it maps across all types of partnership. And the way you do that is by listening and by taking it slow and by allowing yourself to be in a space of observation, because a lot of times we are in the space of talking and the space of giving and the space of doing. But a lot of times it's very powerful to be in the space of sitting back, of being, of listening, of observing, of watching, and watching in various situations, watching, from being with how the person is with their family to how they are in business. Do they map across? Is there consistent behavior? And so these are some of the things this is what I wanted to talk about today. Like, that's really it. What questions or comments do you have? I'm definitely interested to know what questions and comments you have for what you've seen so far. And I'll just kind of look to see if any comments are coming up. How have you chosen your partners? Where have you either moved too quickly, or where have you actually used this method of sort of courting and observing and watching the dynamic, and where has that ended up serving you, being at your benefit? So I'd love to hear from those who are live and watching. And if you are watching on replay today, please feel free to comment, because I would definitely love to hear on the back end. I'm always watching the comments, how you in the past have either ignored these steps, ignored this part. And I'm sure there are many more steps that you can take, things that you can look at, but these are just three that are like really loud for me that I typically constantly look at when forming partnership. And that's why it's important to take it slow. So if you're listening on the back end, go ahead and comment and let me know, like, when have you either used these or ignored these things. And one other thing I'm going to speak about One other thing I'm going to speak about is intuition. So at the end of the day, if you have, if you've looked at how they handle stress and they seem to handle stress very well, if you have looked at the way they communicate, how they communicate, if you've looked at whether there's congruence inside of their communication, if you have, looked at the dynamic and the dynamic seems good, remember your intuition matters as well. If all of that checks off, check the boxes, you're checking the boxes, everyone's checking the boxes, and there's still something inside of you that says, that's just unsure, then you want to listen to that. You want to listen to that. And you also want to get in communication about that. Like, this seems to be going well, but there's this little nagging voice in me that something doesn't feel right. And you can, see what the response to that is. Will it be something that is acknowledged? Will there be gaslighting? What will it be, right? But I am very big on listening to that inner voice, listening to the intuition at the end of the day. If everything, is checks the boxes and the intuition is like, this is a good move, then you follow that intuition. If the boxes are all checked and there's something in that says, something doesn't feel right, something feels off, that's usually the unconscious mind speaking to you in a way. And some say higher power, that too, right? All of the above. But it definitely, that inner voice consists of like that unconscious mind reminding you or recalling something similar that didn't match, that maybe you saw, heard, or experienced that didn't match up, and it could be a higher power speaking, like, this is not the time. But listen to that inner intuition as well, because it generally does not steer you wrong. If you are clear, grounded, and you know that you're not moving strictly from emotion, right? Because there's a difference between moving from emotion and moving from intuition. That inner intuition is an inner knowing, and that emotion triggers a physiological response based on neurotransmitters in the brain. So with that said, I'll look forward to hearing in the comments from you all what has worked in choosing partnerships, what has not worked in choosing partnerships, where you have been successful and where you have work to do. And of course, if you want to learn more, a little bit more about how to more deeply connect with that intuition, and so that you can trust the intuition, you can trust that deeper inner voice, so you can trust the decisions that you make day to day, then you can reach out to me. You can go to remapmymind.com. You can I talked to you about the neuro-linguistic programming and the hypnosis trainings that I do that help people to reconnect in that way. Or if you want personal deep work, then you can reach out to me as well. Links right in the bio. Schedule a free call with me, and we can talk about the rapid transformational coaching that I do, the NLP-based coaching that I do. So with that said, I hope everyone stays safe out there, and that you guys have a great rest of the day and a great weekend to come. And I will see you all next week. Bye. Namaste.